Welcome to the Dream Key Podcast, your key to all things Dragon Gate. Our host unit for this episode is Leon.
Hello.
Me, Jimmy Chuck, and our special guest, Jay.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Trust me, it's an honor for us. So, what have things been like since the lockdown?
In Japan?
Yeah.
It's not all that different from anywhere else, I guess. I mean, here we're not, we have a state of emergency in place, but the state of emergency doesn't allow for the government to forcibly shut places down. They can say, please close, or please don't allow X amount of people, but there's no way for them to legally enforce it. So it's just basically people are going to work. The crowds are still, the trains are still crowded. Supermarkets are still crowded. People are still out in parks with kids. Looking out my window now, and there's a bunch of kids and their parents playing in the yard next to me. A lot of places are working from home, which is good, but because of the culture here, like telework isn't an option for a lot of companies. So yeah, it's ending after Golden Week, so we're going to see if we're going to go back to work or if it's going to get extended or what. But
Yeah.
thankfully, the numbers haven't been super high. The hospitals don't seem to be overrun, but they're also not doing a lot of testing, so we really don't know. I think in the end, the state of emergency is going to get extended up until June 1st, and then we'll go from there and see what happens.
We very much appreciate you coming on the show today, and we really wanted to take this opportunity to kind of shed a light on you, because you are such an important part of Dragon Gate history, at least for the Western fans. And a lot of newer fans may not know a whole lot about you. They may hear about the legendary Jay, but he's done for the community, but they don't know
The legend of iheartDG.
they don't know about iheartDG, which is gone now, and things like that.
It hasn't even been a year. Have I already been lost to history that quickly?
Time flies.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, let's start from the beginning. How did you get into wrestling?
I had an uncle. My aunt would babysit me a lot, but she started dating this guy. So, like, she would bring me to his house to, for dinner or whatever. Then they would stick me out. They would, stick me in the den while they watched TV in the main room. And he was big on like pirating, like Coliseum home video. So he would put on wrestling, like, and say, here, watch this. So it would be like the best of Roddy Piper and things like that. So around WrestleMania 2 would have been around the time I got into wrestling. Like, because Hogan versus Bundy was the first like big thing I remember seeing in real time.
That's wild.
That says how old I
will
tell everybody how old I am.
I was just thinking, like, I got into wrestling in 2005.
Yeah, no, I'm an old fucker, so.
You're Team Toryumon.
Yeah, no, beyond that, I was I was on Nitro with those guys pretty much.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, it's like then I fell out of wrestling around the time that everybody else did in the early 90s, and then it would have been like the Monday Night Wars, and Nitro was what brought me back in 97.
Oh, cool. It's like Big R.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's also a Buffalo Bills fan, and I'm from Buffalo, so a lot in common.
So, I don't know if that's a good thing, having a lot in common with Big R Shimizu.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills fan thing is probably not a fortunate thing.
So the next step in your journey is getting into Dragon Gate. So how did that come about?
Okay. Well, like I just said, I was a big Nitro fan, so I knew Ultimo Dragon. I was a fan of Ultimo Dragon from that. He brought the Toryumon guys on to Nitro a few times in 98 or 97, 98. And I didn't, it didn't register with me at the time, but it just the idea of, that's cool, he's got a school, that stuck in my head. And then not too long after that, I got it. I had a coworker who was getting into tape trading, and he was like, we would talk about wrestling, and he would say, yeah, I'm going to get these tapes from Japan, and if you want anything, just let me know. I said, okay, let me get, and I looked at the listings, and there was some Michinoku Pro from '98, and this would have been the Sasuke Gumi era where the Crazy Max guys were on there. So I watched that, and I said, oh, these are Ultimo Dragon students. And then the listing came in with the first Torimon show, so I got that. And it didn't like, I would get the tapes every couple months. Like I wasn't doing tape every month, getting the TV as it was coming out, but I would get the Torimon in every box that we did. And then eventually, around the time that, what would it have been? I guess around the time M2K formed and Darkness Dragon debuted would have been the time that it actually became like my main promotion, and I was following it religiously and going out of my way to order the new TV every month and things like that.
Well, like I say, you were into DG and Toryumon like very, very early on. Was there like any fan base like there is now?
Um, well, I mean, in Japan, yes, of course. Western fan base, I mean, there were message boards and things like that where they would do general tape reviews, or like the Death Valley Driver website was the big one where they would do these huge, like they'd write like these huge review issues that were, I wouldn't say monthly, but they were very frequent, and they would cover Torimon. And Torimon was like the hot early 2000s internet promotion for a brief period of time, more so when T2P started. Because the T2P tapes, when they came out, blew everybody's mind. But Torimon was still pretty hot.
I mean, the
And
style
that,
today still pretty
yeah,
it's still a style that's like it's like still kind of indescribable what the style was.
yeah, T2P especially. The original Torimon people just considered it like an extension of the mid '90s,
Michinoku.
like like the Kaientai, like the Kaientai versus Michinoku Pro Army
Mm.
style. But it was when the T2P stuff came out that people really stood up and took notice of it as something unique. I think Dragon Gate now, still, for the people that don't really watch it, still gets considered of, well, it's just a derivative of the Michinoku Pro style, even though it's branched off and become something totally different beyond that. But it was around 2000, again, around the time that Darkness Dragon debuted, that I was getting super into it. So I wanted, at the time, it was very, very difficult to get things like results and news. Like, it was easy to get, like there was a German guy actually named Stefan Pixhaus, I think was his name. He had a website called Pixie's ProRes News, and he would put up like results and things like that. And he was pretty on top of it. He would have new updates a couple times a week, but it was only the result of this guy beat this guy, no finishers, no match times, and no. The other important thing was there was no description of anything that happened at the show. So for things like All Japan, New Japan, that's fine. Really, you only need the results because they weren't doing things like long promos or long angles in the shows. But like you would read the Torimon results, and then you'd get the tape, and then you'd see there was all this talking going on in between, and there was these angles, and this guy turned on this guy, and or this guy debuted. I was getting frustrated because it was incredibly difficult to keep up with it. There was going back to Michinoku Pro, I had an acquaintance that I had gotten to know through Fire Pro Wrestling, of all things, because he was making like really cool Japanese indie edits at the time. So I got in touch with him, and me and this other guy, the guy Joel, that I used to do a podcast about 10 years ago, I guess. The guy who was my co-host on that, and the three of us would always, share edit information and just shoot the shit. And he was running a Michinoku Pro fan site where he was going in depth and describing the angles and things that were going on. So I just basically copied his idea. The coworker I had that I was tape trading with, I would always complain to him. Like I would get the new tape and I'd say, yeah, there was this big angle on this and I don't know what happened. And he got tired of me complaining and said, look, why don't you just do it yourself? Not as a challenge, as a shut up, do it, or stop complaining about it type of thing. So I said, you know what? That's what I'll do. And so I started at the time it was Torimon USA. It was very, very difficult. Like I didn't know any Japanese at the time. Like I only knew very, very basic stuff. And it was also before social media and before like things like mobile sites and things like that. It was really difficult to get up to date results. So what you would have to do, like there was the Nikon Sports website would post results every day, but it was only the top 3 matches. So you wouldn't get undercard results. What you would have to do is you would have to go, and the Japanese community at the time was very big into like also having personal homepages, and those homepages would have like like message boards, and that was where you would have to go to. You would go on there and you would find these fan reports where the fans would be giving real time updates to their personal blog. Like, this is even before blogs, straight up, bulletin board message system. So you would go there and it would say this person beat this person with this move, and then this happened. So I would have to go through, like, crawl through all that, try and translate it, and then post it up. Like it wasn't easy like it is today, where you can just go on the mobile site or just go on Twitter and pull the result and get it in real time. Like it was a struggle to go through. It would take maybe an hour or 2 hours to try and cobble together just results for a show a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I was actually going to ask about that. Like, learning Japanese, was it easy?
I had started studying Japanese a little bit before doing this, but living in Buffalo, like you can learn the alphabets and you can learn words and all that, but if you have chances to have real conversations, it's impossible. Like you're not going to be able to. It's almost impossible to learn a language that way. Later in the 2000s, as I was making more like internet friends, like whether it be through Torimon or through gaming or through whatever, it would be like that was where my Japanese started to improve to the point where I could, translate a full show without having to use like Google Translate, or at the time like Bobblefish or whatever translation software. But it took it wasn't until I moved here. Like I moved here in 2015, which was over 5 years ago now. But it wasn't until I moved here that I really got fully immersed in it, where I could do everything. You do the results, do the finishes, you can do the promos just by either listening to it at the show or just by reading it without having to run it through a translator. So it's a difficult language to learn, yes.
It's crazy. I feel like you've been in Japan longer than 5 years. From my perspective.
No, 2000. I started coming here as far as like visiting, for World and things like that. Like I came here in 2011 for 5 days, just to go to World. I had been intending on coming here to go to visit for years and years and years and years and meet people, and I just never did. I either didn't have the money or I just couldn't be bothered. And then the 3/11 earthquake happened in 2011, and one of my better Torimon friends unfortunately passed away in that. And I thought, shit, I should have gone earlier. I would have had the chance to meet them, blah, 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 all these regrets. So I went in 2011. I said, this is okay. I'm going to go once just to say I did it. Came over, went to World. I was only here for 5 days. So like I came to Tokyo. I was in Tokyo for a day. I went to Kobe, went to World, came back to Tokyo, and then had a few days to go around and do some touristy stuff, and then had to go home. And it like rained the last 2 days, so I kind of had I still want to do a few things. So I came back following year for 10 days, flew into Tokyo, took the Shinkansen to Kobe like immediately, did the World weekend stuff, and then came back to Tokyo and actually had like a week to breathe and do stuff. So I came and I went skating and I met a bunch of people, and they were like, "So are you coming back next year?" And I said, "You know what? Yes, I am," even though I wasn't intending on it. So I came back the next year for a month, because I had a bunch of PTO saved up at work, and we were training like a backup at the time. And I said, "Well, you know what? They're trained now, so let's see if they can handle it. I'm going to go on vacation." And they said,
Throw him under the bus?
"Yeah, no, the work was fine with it." They said, "Well, because I mean, I had been working at that job for years, for many years at that point. They trusted me. They said, you know what, you don't take that much time off. You never call in sick, so yeah, you can do this." So I came over for a month and I did a bunch of Dragon Gate stuff, but I mainly came over to hang out with my skateboarding friends and do all the other little touristy stuff that I hadn't done. Like the trips started becoming more of like a social experience and less of a, okay, I'm coming over to do some wrestling shows and some touristy stuff. And then by the end of that month, it was, they were like, "So are you coming back next year?" And I said, "Yes, I am." So the next year I came back for the tourist visa in Japan is 90 days. So I said, okay, why don't I go over for 3 months? And I talked to work and they said, "You can't take 3 months off." And I said, okay, but how about if I take a half day every day for the next 3 months and just work in the morning? Well, I was working overnight at the time. So like overnight in the US would be morning time here. So I said, okay, I'll work in the morning and then after that I'll go out. And they said, okay, that's fine. So I did that and I came and made a bunch, did Dragon Gate stuff, but again, made a bunch of friends and they said, "Are you coming back next year?" And I said, "I'll think about it." And I went back home and I thought about it. And I said, "You know what? I'm living in Buffalo, New York. There's nothing going on here. I have a decent job, but my job is telework, so I can do it anywhere. If I move to Japan, I can keep doing it." So looked at ways to get a visa here as a way to stay, and I found that you could get a student visa really easily by going to a Japanese language school. Like you can get a 2-year visa. You just have to show up for class, basically. So I did that and I came here basically with no plan beyond that. It was just, okay, I'm going to go to Japanese school for a year and see what happens. And at the end of that first year, I hated it. I was ready to come back. I could not wait to finish up. I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to the States. It was cool, but it's time to go home. But I ended up, a skateboarding friend of mine said, "Yeah, you're an IT guy. I just started working at this company. Why don't you shoot me your resume?" And usually when people say something like that and they tell you to shoot them your resume, it ends up more often than not, nothing ends up coming of it. But in this case, he actually did send it to the recruiter, and the recruiter called me through like a complicated interviewing process that like it came basically down to the wire of the day of in my final exams for the semester. I would either have to pay tuition to the school to be able to stay or go home. But I got the offer in the middle of my final exams. And I said, cool. I stood up, I bailed on the exam. I didn't even finish.
That's great.
Like left my books and left everything on the desk. Went to the teacher, showed her the message, and said, "Okay, I just got a job offer. I need to go and start all that. I'm not going to bother finishing this."
This was all a sham anyway.
You could just go ahead. You could just go ahead and fail me because I don't care.
So did you have to pay?
2000. That was 2016. So I'd already been here for a year. But yeah, I've only been living for 5 years.
Were you paying tuition for the first year? Is it a grant or some sort?
I paid tuition for the first year. Yeah, I had enough. I mean, like, I was still working, so like I had the money to pay the tuition. I just didn't want to. like living here was cool, but like paying to live here, it wasn't that cool. Like I could like just living here. Like I live here now, and I imagine moving back anytime soon. But like if I was paying $3,000 every 6 months to stay here, I would be much more inclined to go back home.
That adds up quickly.
Like, it's cool, but like Japan is cool, but it's not that cool. from
it's like, especially if you live there, it just like gets old.
Yeah, there's a lot of really tiresome and tedious things about it, and like the business culture sucks, and rush hour trains suck, and a lot of the bureaucratic stuff that like give you an example. I moved, like my lease was up in my old place back in February, so I wanted to move, and I was looking at all these places, and there were like this one apartment. I went and I was ready to sign the contract, and the owner changed his mind and said, "Okay, you know what? I don't want a foreigner living here." So then go back to the real estate place, and we're calling all these places, and they're like, "Well, I don't want a foreigner living here." But finally, the place that I moved in now, it was okay to move in here, but to get the contract signed, I had to get it's standard practice to have an emergency contact, but it's usually okay, we need a Japanese friend to be your emergency contact. But for this place, it couldn't just be a Japanese person. It had to be a Japanese coworker that would be willing to sign on as my emergency contact. And it's like, why can't it just be like my girlfriend who's here all the time anyway? Or why can't it be, my one friend who lives 10 minutes down the street and would be the first one here if I was, passed out, shot, or stabbed in my apartment. Like, no, it had to be like, I don't socialize with any of my coworkers. That's another big Japanese thing. You go out drinking with your coworkers and your boss, and you all work hours of overtime together. My job doesn't have that culture. So like I don't know my coworkers at all. Like I see them at the office, and we're all working from home now, but otherwise, like I don't know them like that. So putting them in as emergency contact is actually like completely reductive because they would one have to come all the way across town to find me shot or stabbed in my apartment, and on the other they don't know me that well. But at the end I hit the HR lady, and she was nice about it. But like she's not someone that could be a reliable emergency contact. Like if she gets fired, then where's my emergency contact go? Like why can't it be, a friend that I've known for 7 years that lives down the street? Like it makes no sense to me. But that was what the landlord wanted, and that's stuff like that happens all the time here.
That's an interesting thing you bring up. Like they didn't want a foreigner living there. Do you face like that often, where like there's kind of a stigma or xenophobia towards foreigners?
Oh, for moving into apartments, yes. Every apartment I've lived in, the last place I lived in, I had to go door to door in the building and introduce myself. And if any of them had any doubts as to whether I was a shady person or my Japanese wasn't good enough to live there, like they could say no, and I would.
That's crazy.
And otherwise, you get the little stuff like you said on the train. Like if you're sitting on a train and the seat next to you is open, the person won't sit down. Like they'll either stand up or they'll get up and go, and little things like that. It's not anything that that I take as like personally offensive or anything like that. It's just the way it's an island with a homogeneous population. So it is what it is.
So please jump in if I'm skipping over anything. But you just say you currently live in Japan and you do some work for Dragon Gate. What made that possible, and how did that come about?
Working directly for Dragon Gate. First, when back in 2008, Dragon Gate ran a show in Los Angeles. Two shows, one in Los Angeles, one in Hawaii. And at the time, there was no, this was just before Dragon Gate USA. So there was no way for them to advertise this show. They were putting posts like on the SoCal Uncensored message board. Like that was the way they were advertising the show. So I sent them a DM. I said I had actually met them. The guy who was running the Houston office, his name was Satoshi Oji. He was the guy who ended up being president of Dragon Gate USA. But during the first couple ROH excursions, like when Shima and Shingo came over to Buffalo in 2005, Mr. Oji and Mr. Kido, who is now Dragon Gate president, both came over, and they were like, the Japanese guys in suits that were there. So I figured they were important, so I should go over and introduce myself. So I went over and introduced myself to them, but just as a, thank you for a big Dragon fan, blah, blah, blah. But, and then again in Detroit, or in Chicago, and then in Detroit the following 2 years, I would, make it a point to go up to them and say hello and say, thank you for coming over. I'm enjoying what you're doing. I would, Tozawajuku, blah, blah, blah. So I sent them a message and said, hi, I don't know if I'm messaging someone who was there, if you remember me, but we talked at the ROH shows, and I have this website. that, you know, anyone that is a Dragon Gate fan in the US probably read it at some point during the month. So if you need help selling tickets or promoting the show, please don't hesitate to ask. And they responded back and they said, yes, please help us. So I helped out with that. And then when Dragon Gate USA started, I got pulled in to do some writing for them. Also around the same time, they had started doing this might be before you guys, your time with Dragon Gate, but they were doing a web magazine in Japanese because at the time in Japan, they were really struggling to get coverage in the magazines like Weekly Pro and all that. They were at that time still ignoring Dragon Gate and not giving them
That
a
will
lot.
be like 2009.
2009, 2010, yeah. Because yeah, it was around the time Ricochet showed up because I remember I got pulled in to do translation. Like I would translate and we would do an English version. And so that was like the first time I got paid by them, you know, to do work. But at that point, Mr. Oji ended up bailing. Like he just quit in the middle of the night one day. But I remained friends with Mr. Keto. You know, he would help. He was the one that would set me up with tickets and everything when I would come to Japan. And I would, you know, make it a point to go over and, you know, say hello and thank you and, you know, bring him souvenirs, you know, say, and, you know, thank you gifts and all that. And when I moved over here, you know, the relationship stayed the same. He would say thank you, you know, he'd say thank you. And, you know, anytime I needed a ticket or anytime I needed anything, he would say, please just, you know, message me directly. And he was number two in the company at the time. So he was a good friend to have.
Yeah.
And then I just, one day, I'm thinking, and I went over and I said, what do you guys think about having like an official English Facebook, official English Twitter, things like that? Because, you know, New Japan had opened theirs. I think Stardom had already opened theirs at the time. So companies were starting to have an official English presence on social media. And basically their perspective on it was, if you're willing to do all the work and we don't have to do anything, you can do it. And I said, okay. Yeah, because it's not hard to maintain, you know, the social media is not that hard to maintain. So I said I was fine with doing that. We also tried to do like a merchandise store, but the logistics were too difficult on that. So then when the network started, the network guys would always send was always very quick to either retweet stuff or post when new stuff went up on the network. And I guess the guys that the Gower guys that do the network, like there's two guys, Mr. Honda, and then the other guy, I don't, which is bad. I should know his name, but I don't know his name. You know, they like Mr. Keto said, I want to introduce you guys to the Gower guys, and like you know, you're so fast and blah 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 blah. But then the conversation shifted to, do you think you can do English commentary? This would have been 2018. This would have been right after the split. It would have been at the World Fan Party because they were live streaming the fan party. You know, the contract signings from that. And I said, no, I can't do English commentary. If you need me to, I can, but I can't do it. So you should get people that can, and I'd be more than happy to help them out. So that turned into they went to Larry and Lenny, and then they said, okay, we're gonna go with Lenny. And well, it was actually Rich Bocchini at first. He did the first show, and then Lenny came in because Lenny couldn't make the first show. And at the time, you know, Mr. Keto comes up and he's like, so we're gonna go with these guys, but we think that maybe around Osaka or Fukuoka, we're gonna look at having you come in to help them out directly. And I said, okay. And ended up not happening for Osaka, but then they did the Korakuen show a few days after Gate of Destiny last year. And Mr. Keto called me in early and he said, can you come in? We have a favor to ask you. And he said, can you sit in and help them translate? And I said, okay. And then they're like, well, next month we want to do Korakuen after Fukuoka, and Lenny has to go home, so can you do it? And I was ready to say no, but then Larry comes down and they tell Larry that you and Jay are gonna do Korakuen, and he looks at me and says, fantastic, and he gives me that infectious Larry Dallas grin. And I said, okay, so let's do it. So that's where we're at.
And that's crazy because like I sing the praises of your commentary duo. Like my favorite commentary team of all time is Don West and Mike Tenay. So
Okay.
you guys kind of have that relationship where you're the ever knowledgeable Don or Mike Tenay, and Larry Dallas is a page of the Don West
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, that's a compliment because today was what I was aiming for. The plan for this year before everything went to hell would have been, this is Lenny and Larry's gig. They're the main announce team, but Lenny has so many other commitments doing WWN stuff, Evolve and all that he just can't, and family, day job, and all that other stuff. He can't come over here that much. So I was just going to be the fill-in, and then on the shows that Lenny could come over, I would go from being translating off screen. Like the first couple shows, what I was doing is like when there was a promo, I would translate real quick and write it on a pad and then pass it over to Lenny for him to read.
I was wondered, like, the
Which
first call, I was like, damn, he can speak really good Japanese. Just
yeah,
translate that.
yeah. But at the end of the day, at the time, I hadn't done commentary before, so just sticking me on there may have been awkward. So like the first Korakuen show and the Torimon reunion show were like my tryouts. So I had to pass those before I would be allowed to be the third man in the booth. But it would just be to hear it, translate it in my head, write it down, pass the notepad over to Lenny, have Lenny read it, and then process it in a way that makes it sound like he's not just reading off of a notepad. It would be much easier just to have me step in and do it. So I was hoping that as a 3-man booth we could kind of replicate the Shivani Heenan Mike Tenay 3-man dynamic, where you've got Lenny as the professional sports broadcaster, Larry as the former heel manager, all character, all charisma, and then me as the encyclopedia.
That
So that's
sounds
what I was hoping
fantastic.
for. And I hope we get to do it at some point. I mean, I don't know, even if we do get back to touring and can put on shows, I mean, I don't know if World is going to happen or not, because that's probably too many people to put in a building. We're still, what, 12 weeks out, so who knows what's going to, you think about what the World was like 12 weeks ago, you can only imagine what it's going to be like 12 weeks from now. So we'll see what happens, but I hope we can do it.
Now, I've heard a story about a Tozawa Juku shirt, about like that getting you noticed.
Who told you that story?
I believe I've heard it in a different interview.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was a big Tozawa Juku fan, and in 2006, this would have been after Tozawa Juku had started up. A bunch of guys came over to do Battle of Los Angeles in PWG, and I was talking with a bunch of them. I said Tozawa's my favorite wrestler, and they all gave me like this shocked face because Tozawa was still a wild young boy.
Oh, I know that.
Wild young boy.
Yes.
Wild young boy comedy jobber at the time. But I said no, I like Tozawa. And then when they came back in 2007 and they came to Detroit, I think it was, like I had a Tozawa Juku shirt and I was super like, I had a Tozawa Juku shirt, I had a Dragon Gate Next shirt. And the first night I wore the Dragon Gate Next shirt and Yamato was like, "Oh." And the next night I wore the Tozawa Juku shirt and everybody was like, they were like, "Where did you get that?" And then Shingo, was it Shingo? I think Shingo remembered that I was the guy that liked Tozawa. So he comes over and like this group of fans kind of crowds around me, and Mochizuki comes over and says something to me, and like I threw back Katsuo. Katsuo is a member of Tozawa Juku, Yuki Ono. I threw back his catchphrase at Mochizuki. He looked at the shirt and pointed out Katsuo, and I said, and Katsuo's catchphrase at the time was, "This year is going to be my year," so I threw that back at Mochizuki. And then they did a TV episode covering like those ROH shows, and when it came to Mochizuki's match, like he brought that up on like they were talking about, do people know Dragon Gate in the US, and like the topic of that exchange with them came
That's
up.
cool.
So Mochizuki was talked about it on
Crazy.
commentary about there was this weird Tozawa Juku fan who knew Katsuo's catchphrase. So
There's a
if you go
guy who
back
likes
and
Kozawa. Can you believe it?
yeah, so if you go back and watch the Infinity episode that covers it, was the Mochizuki and I think it was Davey. Yeah, it was Davey Richards because I remember Mr. Oji came over and said this is going to be a kicking battle when that match happened. So if you go back and watch that match, I think that was the match where that came up. But yeah, that was. I don't know if that got me noticed in the right way. That might have been points against me more than anything. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
If anything, Kozawa was the problem child back then.
at the time, yes.
it's funny you say how being a fan of Tozawa was weird, and why would you ever care about that fan? Care about that guy? That type of reaction. Leon here is the world's biggest Yoshida fan.
Oh, everybody loves Takashi.
But it's
His Instagram is awesome. He's got like one of the best Instagrams.
He's like cooking so much right now.
Yeah, like it's fantastic.
But when we did our Larry Dallas interview, he said that, and Larry Dallas goes, "Cybercon."
Oh yeah, well Larry failed to lead CyberCon to championship glory, and that will always be
that
a
match,
stain
man.
that'll be a stain on Larry Dallas's managerial career. So,
But hey, he led Naoko Tanizaki and Bibi to some titles.
To Wingate.
yeah, but they didn't defend them once. They lost them in their first defense.
Well, that was Naoko Tanizaki's fault.
Oh, everything is.
Well, we have some fan questions if we still have time.
Okay, but
First, this is kind of one of my questions. The original Dreamgate was lost / stolen. Was it ever found?
that would have been the original version of the second generation belt. It was lost, and they ended up having to buy a replica. But
Didn't
no, they
Shingo
never-
give Yoshino shit for it?
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
they
you
never
lose the
fo-
belt.
Yeah, and since then they haven't had none of the belts have had a properly working gate on the front.
Really?
Yeah.
Crazy.
The second generation belt still had the working one, but the replica they bought didn't have.
So they
What
were-
about the new one, like they have
the
now?
new one? The new one doesn't have the gate gimmick either. It just has the rack for the keys.
Interesting. That's disheartening.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like the one that was lost was never found.
It was never found. It was on the ring truck, and the door to the ring truck wasn't secured, and it just went bouncing off the truck and was gone.
It's crazy to see if someone has it.
Yeah, someone has it somewhere. I'm surprised it hasn't shown up on Yahoo Auctions or Mercari or something like that. But I think the Brave Gate also fell off the truck, but it was on the side of the road and in like buried under a bush. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the Brave Gate. In 2019, it kind of got a makeover with the white strap. Was there any specific reason for this, or they just I've never understood it because it looks kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, it was Dragon Kid's idea. He wanted to make the belt stand out from all the other ones. The strap on the was it Eita destroyed?
Yeah, Eita just destroyed it.
demolished
Like
it.
Eita destroyed. That's right. Eita destroyed it. It was all taped together, so they had to do a restoration on the title belt. So to make it stand out and make it different from the other belts, they gave it a white strap.
Then Eita also destroyed a twin.
You look good on Dragon Kid, but doesn't now it look kind of weird. But
I think it looked good on Susumu.
Yeah, I think it looked better on Susumu than on Dragon Kid. I feel like the strap was too big for Dragon Kid.
yeah, that is true. That is true.
It looked like it was covering 4 of his 6 abs. It's like, all right.
One of our listeners would like to hear. They'd like to hear your thoughts on Jason Lee's reception in Japan and what you think his ceiling is.
Oh, Jason is super over. People love Jason. Jason was one of those guys that when he came over, it was just he seemed like a business connection type of thing. They want to go into Hong Kong, so we're bringing in this guy to go into Hong Kong. But man, he got super good really fast, and now he's essential. He's essential roster member at this point, and
He's like people like a lot of outsiders don't adapt to the style quickly, but he
Yeah,
just took to it
yeah.
in a matter of weeks.
I don't think anybody, and this includes guys like Ricochet, Pac. I don't think
Yeah,
anybody has picked up and become just like a, how can I say this? Like guys like Pac and
embodying the
Ricochet,
style.
yeah, like guys like Pac and Ricochet, Uha Nation. You know, the guys that came in, like the four came in and did really well. They still came in and stood out because of the spectacular things that they could do.
Hmm.
Whereas Jason has come in and just fit like a glove into the style to where he doesn't necessarily always stand out, but after you're done watching a match, if you go back and watch it again and you notice all the little things he does, like he's just so good at everything.
It's crazy
Um,
that the Fed just like slept on him.
well,
Well,
yeah,
it's gain for us.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he's. I don't know what his ceiling, as far as his ceiling goes. I mean, he should be the guy that beats Kaito for the Brave Gate. Um, you know, I see him as a guy that wins all the champ. I don't see him as a Dreamgate guy. Maybe one Dreamgate challenge someplace down the road, but he's gonna be.
It's like a Genki.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
a Kagatora.
like a yeah. I think Horiguchi is probably a better comparison, but yeah, like in that Horiguchi Kagetora, um, I
Mid
I
card like
I want
title match.
I
That kind
want
of.
him to be higher than that, though. You know, saying that, hearing myself, okay, yeah,
He's
you know, comparable to Kagetora is not an insult, but at the same time, like I want more for Jason than that. So, you know, I hope that, you know, I hope that he can exceed that ceiling. But
I mean,
I want to see him be Brave Gate champion
yeah, I was
sooner than
like
later.
at the end of Maximum, he like kind of fell off a little, or like after they lost the Triangle Gate, he like kind of fell off a little. But then when Kaito turned, like he really showed like the way he conveys emotions. Like you could just like the way he just showed you he was hurt that Kaito
Yeah,
turned on him. Like that's like stuff that you can't teach,
yeah, exactly.
and he has that down to a T.
And that it being, you know, having the story with Maximum was the family away from Hong Kong when he first came here, and they were the ones that gave him they gave him the place to be while he was away from his home country, and then eventually inviting him to become a member of the Dragon Gate family, and having, you know, Kaizo turn on Maximum, and, you know, for petty reasons, you could see how much, you know, Maximum meant to him. You know, unfortunately, then Maximum got disbanded not too long after, so you didn't really get to get much of a continuation on that. But unfortunately, that was one of those things that couldn't be helped.
Speaking of outsiders, like we've had Kai and Cosma come in the last year or so and become regulars and even joining units, kind of in the same vein as Jason. How are guys like that
Yeah.
brought in, and like, are there any qualifications to it?
Um, Chasma, I think, was a connection through Pac. Don't quote me on that, but Kai was brought in by Shingo. But Kai's another one. Kai was one of those guys that when he came in, it
He
was
was like
like,
such an oddball.
yeah, it was like, to me, like it was clearly like it was after, you know, it was around the
Same
time
Biscuit.
that things were starting to happen with, you know, it was becoming obvious that Takagi was getting ready to leave, and there were a lot of things that were being done to kind of keep him happy at the time. And to me, you know, bringing in Kai and letting, you know, Takagi work with him, or having him, you know, giving Kai some work, I thought was one of those things to keep Takagi happy. And I thought as soon as Takagi left, you know, Kai would have been, you know, Kai would be phased out, um, going, you know, in the next couple months. And like he wasn't even booked for the December shows. Like, the story about they needed a spot on the Doi darts board. There was like an empty spot left, and they had to fill in a name there to keep it, you know, to make it even. And he just put Kai's name in, not knowing if he could wrestle that day or not. Figuring,
That's cool.
you know, the chances, you know, the chances of hitting, you know, the chances of Kai getting hit, you know,
So
probably
slim.
probably pretty low, you know. And if it gets hit, you know, we'll work something out, see if he can come in. And that match, you know, and then Hulk gets hurt, and he comes in, and says, well, I beat BB Hulk, so maybe I'll come back to Dragon Gate and see if I can beat some other top names. And it ends up like he's another guy that's like essential now at this point.
Yeah, I still remember like the first show of 2019, like the first show when he joined after he joined Tribe Vanguard. The fans screamed so loud for him.
Yeah, and
He's so over.
Super over, and he's one of those guys that I'm gonna go back in time a little bit. Like when I don't know if this is a good comparison or not. Like when Johnny Gargano came over back in 2009, like Johnny Gargano's gimmick at the time was just nice guy who works hard and wrestles good. Didn't get over at all. And I said
Wasn't
at
that
the time,
with the World One International?
yeah, World on International.
Oh yeah.
But and I said, guy who wrestles good and works really hard isn't exactly a gimmick that translates very well to Dragon Gate. It didn't work out for him through no fault of his own. That's just how the fan base works. But Kai is an example of a guy who works really hard, wrestles really good, and is a genuinely nice guy and gets rewarded for it. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, and he busts his ass and he does charity work.
He just seems like such a sweetheart.
He is.
Do you think that the reason it didn't work for Gargano, but it worked for Kai, was because of the Gaijin versus a Japanese person?
Yeah. I mean, of course.
2012 was like a lot of experiments. Like AR Fox was there, that didn't last.
Yeah, that was 2012. They did a lot of the transplants to see if they could get some guys over, and some guys worked. Like with foreigners, there's the
Scott Reed, another one.
Yeah, you get like the transcendent level. You get like the Ricochets and the Pacs that come over and become family and become signature wrestlers. But you also get like that second tier of guys where they come over and they do well and everything is fine. Guys like Scott Reed, guys like Gargano, but if they leave, no one's gonna miss them. Like when Ricochet wasn't around, it was like we can't wait until Ricochet comes back. But like if AR Fox or Scott Reed, they come in, they do well, they do good, but when they're gone, no one's really clamoring for them to come back. And I think maybe that's where Diamante would fall in now. Like I don't know where Diamante is going to go from here. Like
they sure would miss him.
Hill would miss him, but like I don't know what's going to happen. He's after the mask match with Ultimo Dragon. Either he stays unmasked as a babyface, or that's the end of him, and who knows. But I think that once he's gone, people aren't. He's kind of over now, but like if he goes away, I think he'll fall into that other tier, kind of like with Daga, where Daga came in and people liked him. He was over while he was here. People, when he's gone, people aren't exactly clamoring for when is Daga coming back.
How's it like? How was it with like Willie Mack?
Willie got super over, man.
Yeah, right.
People really liked Willie, but like he's busy and the schedule just doesn't work.
Yeah, I remember him like doing like an Instagram video, and like he got Japanese fans like, "I know you from Dragon Gate. When you coming back?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah, he got. He was one of those things that Tozawa pushed to have him come in. Around that time in 2018, where the roster was thin and there were no, the foreigners that were supposed to come over for most of the year stopped coming over because they went with the other guys. And Tozawa said, look at this guy, bring him in. He came in, he got super over. The fans loved him. Matches. And
yeah, but Bandito too that year.
Bandito was with Flamita, so he continued to come over, but they didn't know what to do with Bandito. Bandito got super hot in between that first and that second tour, but they still treated him like he was a new foreigner when he came back for the second and third time. So that was kind of like a loss, kind of like a lost opportunity because he got so hot that year outside of Dragon Gate. It didn't quite resonate over here, and by the end it was clear that he was going to go somewhere else, so at that point there's not that much you can do with him.
That reminds me, like, speaking of Willie, we're seeing this Western expansion again, and you guys are partnered with MLW, I honestly thought you guys were going to partner with Impact because of Willie and them having guys like Swan and like
Uh,
former
business,
alumni.
there were business reasons. I don't know if I can talk about it, so I won't.
I understand.
But there were valid business, like the MLW for had better. I don't like again. I don't know if there even was like talk with Impact at all. Like I know Yamato was supposed to work for Impact, like an Impact show last year
Yeah,
Yeah.
as part of the WrestleMania weekend stuff. But
before
like
the
I
guy
don't.
got pulled.
Yeah, because they couldn't because the visas couldn't get done. Um, I thought it would be Impact too, actually. Once the WWE stuff got shut down, um, but no, the MLW offer. So
So that
I mean, I don't know anything about MLW, so I don't know.
I was gonna say, like, how did the MLW thing come about? Or do you guys might
Um,
not know?
they were looking for a partner in the States, and that was the best offer.
Hmm.
It was either that or it was either that or WWE.
Ooh.
Nobody wants that.
And you were talking
So
about like Tozawa recommending Willie. So even when he's working for,
The Fed.
the Fed,
he
he's
still has
still.
he still has a very close relationship with the company and the
Does he
wrestlers. I
come
mean, I don't
like
know.
bi-monthly just to see his wife?
Yeah, his wife has a green card now, so I know that she's in the U.S. a lot. But he does. They do still come. They do still come. I think her job is still here. So yeah, he does. He's over here pretty frequently.
I know he
Um,
like pops up on Susumu's Twitter a lot.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
I don't think
Punchy.
anyone. I don't think anyone thinks that he's coming back anytime soon. But no, he still has a good relationship with the company. His who knows what's going on with this contract stuff, and who knows who's going to still be employed. By the end of all this, I mean, WWE's going to go back to business as usual sooner than later anyway. But I don't. I don't think the expectation is that Tozawa is coming back. I think he's going to stay. So, but he is still good friends with everybody here, and he's backstage at shows and things like that.
I would say his relationship is kind of, from just a fan perspective, his relationship has improved since the exiting of certain parties.
Yeah. Um, I mean, he was always. It wasn't so much his relationship with people has improved. It's just the people he didn't get along with aren't there anymore. So it's kind of that's as simple as that.
Hmm.
Now that we talk about Tozawa and like his like breakthrough, I don't want to say breakthrough, but like the good the excursion did for him, and we now see Yuki. Like Dragon Gate usually doesn't do excursions anymore, just like with Shun and Yuki. Like, how did that came about?
I don't know actually. As far as excursions go, they didn't have any partners, and also
Oh,
the previous regime never really saw the value in that sort of thing. Guys got sent to Mexico every now and then to go, live and work, live in Mima Shimoda's house and work down there. But that was more guys like Eita wanted to go to Mexico. So, like that whole thing kind of expanded out from him wanting to go. They said, okay, well, we'll send these other guys too, and have it turn into a thing. But I don't know. I mean, Shun was going nowhere.
yeah.
He had peaked really early last year, and then once it became clear that
Benkei's
they weren't,
buddy.
yeah, once they decided to not do a unit,
Benkei's water boy.
pretty much, yeah. I mean, he got that super hot start to the year. He was still having good matches, but like once he teamed up with Benkei, he lost. Excuse me, he lost like any sort of like presence. They would come out. They would come out to Benkei's music, and if they won, Benkei would win, and if they lost, Skywalker would lose. And he would have, he had these meaningless matches that were all good, but like the matches he had didn't really mean anything on the big
You had like that
shows.
one
So
Susumu match.
yeah, it was
Just
good.
just was good, but
Just
like
like
why?
why? I mean, why not make it a Brave Gate match since they were doing it and he
He
was going
was,
to win anyway?
if I remember correctly,
But
Shun is billed as 1 kilogram over the limit.
1 kilogram
One.
over the weight limit.
no, that'll do it.
Like you guys couldn't kayfabe him down 1 kilogram.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Kondo was champion, and he's 5 kilos over, but Yeah, I don't know. So him going to Mexico is probably good. Gets him out of sight, out of mind.
I mean, same for
Yoshioka,
Yuki though. He wasn't like
yeah,
after the unit thing. Like he got a twin gate match with Mochi, but after that, like Yuki, Hyo, and Kota got way more prominence.
yeah. I like Yoshioka a lot. I think Yoshioka is the best out of that group. Um, in terms of like overall package.
His
But
in ring is
yeah,
really good. Like I
really
just
good.
remember that King of Gate match with Susumu we had, for
Uh,
example. Like he can go.
yeah, I mean it's bad timing for Yuki to go over because like he left as soon as everything shut down. Um, and I think Skywalker was supposed to be back around this time, so who knows what's going to happen with those two now.
Well, it was surprising for
I
me
mean, he has his
personally.
first match, right? He had his first match in Mexico a few weeks, days ago.
Did he?
There was a match
When the
popping
ring
up on
broke?
YouTube.
I I make it a I kind of make it a habit to not follow guys when they go on excursion, so I'm surprised when they come back. So
Mm.
Hmm.
I don't really keep track when guys go away. Like I've seen some Skywalker stuff pop up like in gifs. I think I did watch one match. I watched the match he had with Supernova because it popped up in my YouTube recommendations while I was in bed one night. So I was like, fuck it, why not? And I fast forwarded through most of it. But yeah, I don't know what's going on in Mexico as far as companies running or what kind of empty arena stuff is going on. But I don't know. Hopefully he can get some experience. Hopefully at least he gets some training experience down there.
Yeah, I thought for sure. Like, I honestly didn't think Yuki was going to go to Mexico. I thought he'd be sent to the UK or.
Yeah, um, so many names in the Dragon Gate generation, but then when the match got canceled, he just goes on his blog and says, "I'm going away for a while." And I thought maybe it would be like you said, the UK, or maybe he would go right to MLW because it was right after the partnership got announced. So I thought maybe he would go there, but I don't know. I hope they don't try and do like another millennials type group because we've had enough of that.
God, I hate the millennials.
Millennial.
Yeah,
It's crazy because UT is one of my favorite wrestlers.
yeah, but UT didn't.
He didn't do anything in the millennial.
Yeah, no.
He had a
To be
good
fair, no one
he
did
had
that
a
in
good
millennials.
he had a good look in the millennium, but as a
Oh, I
whole,
thought his
like yeah,
look in the millennials is the worst. I think his best
really
look is like 2016, like the feud with Yamamura and Ishida. I think that's his best look.
wasn't he just wearing like black trunks and a shaved head in 2016?
He
Or
had
was
like
it?
no, like that was like Kobe 16, but Dead or Alive 16. He had like the camel shorts
Okay,
and like
okay,
a side cut. Like that's the best look, I
They're not
think.
even shorts; they're like MMA pants.
Yeah, and
okay.
but like the red mohawk, never got into it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, well, that was geez, the Millennials was 5 years ago too. They got disbanded right when I moved to Japan, not too long after. So it was like Dia Hearts got disbanded right when I got here. And I was so happy at that show because I was at that show in Cork and I got disbanded. So happy that we were done with that. Anyway, I hope Yoshioka and Skywalker do well. I don't again I don't know how much work they're getting now, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they'll have to get called back here, just for health and safety reasons.
I mean, what would you do at that point? Just like put him in Dragon Gate generation, or just like let him team with Mochi and Gamma for a while?
I mean, at that point, if you would, I would keep it a surprise and then just have them show up as a tag team.
Mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's really not that much else you can do. I mean, we've lost 3 months of story progression at this point. The cage match is gone, so whatever turn was going to happen in the cage match, or whatever twist and turn was going to come out of that, is gone. Things like the Eita and Shimizu strife aren't going to get to play out. Okuda and Ishida, they'll probably keep it going, but that's also lost steam. So at this point, you just kind of have to hit the reset button. If they have to come back and you have to bring them in as a tag, like a lone wolf tag team, then so be it.
They just like stop with the generational war altogether, or do you think they'll play it out to the end?
I
Because
mean,
like,
that depends on how long this goes for. I mean, I I was expecting it to go the entire duration of the year.
Hmm.
So I think that for better or worse, you still keep going with it. I mean, there's still other twists and turns to come in with that. But once you have someone, I mean, it's going to have to end when someone, either Doi, Yamato, Kzy, one of like the big names from the two sides joins RED. That'll be, when it starts to end. Then whether it's Eita or Shimizu or whoever leaves and has to join forces with whoever, and it becomes, Eita, whether it be Eita, Benkei, and Dragon Kid, or whatever group that ends up coming together to oppose the person that turned on them. That's when you start forming out new units and going from there. I think you can do it naturally, though. I don't think this is like a feud that is going to end with a generation disbands match or anything like that. So the natural ending is going to have to be some sort of cross generation alliance forming and a super unit coming out of that.
It's sad that you mentioned like Big R joining the Dragon Gate generation, and like to me it's such a tragedy we never got to see Benkei versus Big in a singles blow off, because it felt like that was the way they should have give Benkei the Dream Gate right after the turn. It's like, well, that seems like a natural next step.
Yeah, I did the Voices of Wrestling Dragon Gate podcast earlier this week, and that was one of the things that we talked about was how Benkei's reign was really hurt by the people that they put him against in terms of having the fans get behind him. Again, I don't think Benkei's reign was like a failure or anything like that. I thought that he had a very good title reign, but putting him first against Yamato and then against Mochizuki in Tokyo, Yoshino in Osaka, he should have been running through. Like, he had like you said, all the reason to blow off with Big R Shimizu. Like, they should have had that match first. I mean, he beat Eita in King of Gate, but it was kind of like a fluky pin, so he should have had another match with Eita before that. They should have given him some defenses where the fans could get behind him before they moved on and had him start taking on guys like Mochizuki and Yamato. And it made all the sense in the world to have him run through RED. And they also had Kazuma, who they could have put ahead of him as he should have been, Benkei against Kazuma could have been the Korakuen Hall defense that he had against Mochizuki, where the fans would get super behind him, and it would be a tough scalp for him to win. Like, he could come out, he could take all of the offense, get kneed in the face and shotate a million times and dropped on his head a million times and still get up and spear his way out of it. And fans would have probably gotten super into it.
I think the fan perspective, between the U.S. and Japan, is the most interesting thing. Because the Benkei reign over here, where people were really excited for and they thought really highly of it, and it was so different in Japan.
And this isn't just a Dragon Gate thing. I think this is just a wrestling fan thing, like a wrestling Twitter thing, I guess, is that they throw the word ace around really, really easily. And where anytime a young guy wins the championship, it means that he's going to be the next guy. Because you've had promotions like All Japan had to put the belt on Miyahara and have him become the ace as a young guy because they had nobody else. Noah had to put the belt on Kitamiya and have him be the young guy because they had nobody else. Whereas companies like Dragon Gate, they still have guys. Yamato is still the ace of the company, and he's still got years to go.
Yet even then, Dragon Gate never really had that one ace.
Yeah. I mean, this
there were always multiple people, like the Big Six, Shima, Magnum.
Yeah, I mean,
Mochi. You had Shima obviously above them, but in a very they were in a similar echelon.
There were really only that 2011 to 2013 period with the long Dreamgate title reign was really the only time where you had Shima that was the only time that Shima had to be champion. and the idea of the company ace is he's the guy that can be champion when the company has to have him be champion, whether it be Tanahashi carrying New Japan through the darker years, or Okada now, or someone like Misawa having to take the GHC title in Noah because all the young guys failed. And the only time in Dragon Gate that period really happened was after the first attempt at getting, having Doya Yamato, Yoshino Takagi be champion over 2008 to 2011, when it was clear that those guys weren't ready to be headliners, not necessarily be the faces of the company, but just be guys that could headline. And when they had to go back to Shima and have him carry the belt for so long, that was really the only time Dragon Gate ever in their history needed to go to someone to be the ace. And I don't think there were anywhere near that position right now to where there was any hurry to put the belt on Benkei and have him be the new ace and face of the company, because one, he's not ready. Two, he can't cut a promo, and three, you can see, they put the belt back on Doi, and Doi always had the knock for, he was a terrible champion, but that was one of the, can I say this? I mean, that was one of the loudest pops for a title change I've heard in people wanted Doi to be champion for so long, and that just shows that even though he's been wrestling for, he's in his 20th anniversary year, there's no need to replace those guys yet. It's good to put guys up at that level, to put Benkei in that conversation, put KZ in that conversation to where they can have matches with those guys and have it seem natural. But there's no need to, like, if KZ wins the championship, there's no need for KZ to be the guy. He can be the champion, he can be a main eventer. Just because you win the championship doesn't necessarily mean you need to become the ace in the face of the company as a baby face. Obviously for heels, that's never going to be the case. But in not just Dragon Gate, in pro wrestling in general, as long as your company is not in a dire emergency situation, there's no need to rush the decision of crowning a new ace.
You mentioned Kzy, and when I started watching, Kzy was like this low boy in Matt Blanky, like even getting, like when he was tagging with Manda Ryu, even sometimes he would get pinned. Like what led to the Kzy push?
Excuse me.
Just Tozawa leaving and him just like taking that mantra, or?
Yes, it was. We talked earlier about Tozawa. He was like the comedy job guy. Why would you even like a guy like this? Back in basically from 2006 up until he went on his U.S. excursion, Tozawa was, he was one, forced to be like a legitimate comedy wrestler, losing matches to Stalker Ichikawa, or he was the jobber in, he was the lowest guy in Kamikaze. He was, losing. He lost a match to Cyber Kong where he would have to go back into dark matches.
It's kind of like Punch
like
nowadays.
Pretty much, yeah. And KZ. As MC KZ, and then as his early time as heel KZ, was very much in that role. In that, he was a guy taking losses, getting put through tables by Onita, things like that. But seeing, when Tozawa came back and became not just a superstar in Dragon Gate, but now is legitimately WWE superstar, even though he had those, that beginning as job guy to Stalker Ichikawa, that if you work hard and if you make the effort, you can become anything. And that inspired KZ. And also with Tozawa leaving, that he was determined he wanted to take up Tozawa's role as the guy that sets the mood on any show. Like if Akira Tozawa is showing up in a match, that the match is going to be at least fun. It might not be, even if it's an undercard match, just by having him in the match is going to be something that fans can watch and enjoy. And that was the spot that KZ wanted to take with him gone. So he got in the gym, busted his ass, got abs for a little while, and that was the inspiration behind that. Now for him, unfortunately, his character hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, still the party boy.
Still like the party boy. Yeah, and because of that, for him, there's always going to, Tozawa in Tozawa's case, it was 2005 to 2009. A lot of that time he wasn't even on TV, or he wasn't on shows. And then he went to the States and came back. Whereas Kzy, I mean, it was like 10 years. It was 2006, basically up until 2016, where he was in that role. So for him, it's going to be a really tough stigma to shake. Like let's say he does become Dreamgate, and Weekly Pro Wrestling wants to do a magazine cover with all the promotions champions. So you've got Tetsuya Naito or Okada, whoever's New Japan champion at the time, and you've got Miyahara, and you've got Go Shiozaki, and you've got these guys who have been, championship guys, and then you've got KZ. So if you're not a Dragon Gate fan, and you only watch Dragon Gate a little bit, 8 or 10 years ago, and you look at KZ as their champion now, it makes it difficult to, because it looks not, people unfortunately want to think the worst, and they're not going to think, wow, KZ has worked his way up to where he can become Dreamgate champion. People get it as oh wow, Dragon Gate has had to put the belt on that guy.
The guy in the car mechanic suit?
Yeah, and people that watch Dragon Gate know that KZ more than deserves to be champion. That he puts on the best, he's the best performer on any show on any given night, all the time. But that stigma is what's going to make it difficult for him to become champion. I kind of look at it as like a Kingston type of thing, where Kofi was 15 years a jobber, and he won the championship, and the match where he won the championship was great, and people were super happy that he won the championship, and it was a great moment. But then you're stuck with the reality of Kofi Kingston as your world champion, and I think we might get with KZ. There's a danger of having the same situation, in that if he won the championship, in the moment where he wins the championship, I think people will go with him, and it'll be a huge pop, and people will be super into it. But then it's where you go from that, where it becomes difficult. So I think for him, he kind of needs to turn heel and get a character makeover before we can really start seriously thinking about him being a guy that can be champion. Right now, he's a main eventer, and again, this is another thing where fans wrestling Twitter in particular tends to look at it as an all or nothing type of thing, where you're either the champion or you're a jobber. Whereas you can be a main eventer, you can be a guy that's in the main event every night. There's no problem with being Triangle Gate champion and being the guy.
It's an important title. I mean,
it's
the
exactly.
title that trusts the house shows and the lesser shows. I mean, it's important to have.
The house style is still very much 6-man tag. So if you're out there every night in winning the 6-man tag match that closes the house show, that's an important spot. That's a super important spot. You don't have to be champion to be a very important and pivotal person in a wrestling company. So I think people need to kind of shake that perception of, if you're not champion, you're losing championship matches, it means you're a meme or you're a jobber.
I mean, like, they giving KZ, Genki, and Susumu like the record for the most title defenses in the Triangle Gate, which is notorious for like having like 2 defense reigns and then quickly changing. I feel like that's like a huge accomplishment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was the entire point of that, was to establish that KZ as a unit leader can lead a unit and have them be successful. And that was the entire story of that title reign. Unfortunately, with Natural Vibes, the problem is they didn't add anybody else to it, and because Horiguchi at the same time asked for the reduced schedule, so he wasn't regularly appearing, and Brother wrestles for Dove, so he can't.
Yeah, and Punch is like not on all shows.
Punch.
I know, like in some, I think it was Hokkaido. It was just Susumu and KZ.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of house shows similar to that, where it was just those 2 guys. So Natural Vibes as a successful unit, I don't know if they're going to go down as a successful unit because of that. But like you said, they set the record for Twin Gate for Triangle Gate title defenses, and that's a huge accomplishment. That's not something that anybody. Maybe we'll get it now. That'll get quickly replaced with this current team, like Ben K, Strong Machine J, and Dragon Dia, a hell of a Triangle Gate team. The first time I was ever super impressed with Strong Machine J is in the 6-man tag tournament back in Sandal Hall at the beginning of this year. I think it was the first round match. Dragon Dia was going for the springboard 450, and he botched it twice. And at that point, everybody in the ring is panicking. But Strong Machine J, which is something, this is honestly, like in Dragon Gate, this is something that you don't see that much, surprisingly or not, where he had the awareness to go and cover for his partner and set up and keep the finish strong, where he went, he body slammed him and put him in position, kind of led Dia up to the corners to just go, do it off the post or do whatever. And that shows that he does actually have very strong in-ring. So I think he's actually probably fundamentally the best guy on that team. So
interesting.
Well, that team is really exemplary of what the Triangle Gate should be. It's the strength, which is Ben, the speed, which is Dia, and the all-arounder, who is Jay.
Oh, it's power, skill, and heart.
Yeah, exactly. And all three of those guys have it. So again, this is, like I said it when they won the championship, that this is the strongest Triangle Gate championship team I've seen. Very, very probably it would go since maybe those World 1 teams with Pac, Hulk, Doi, and Yoshino, were among those four guys. They were
Tozawa, Yoshino, T-Hawk?
Yeah, those teams had T-Hawk on them, though.
T-Hawk, yeah.
Well,
Kong, Kasma, Kanda, maybe?
It's just four. That's just four power guys running you over, though.
Yeah.
Good team, but
I was fine with that trio.
I like the trio. They were fun.
Yeah, they did fine. I liked it better than the second version with Diamante.
And Hyo.
So I have a question. Why did Jay pick Dragon Gate over New Japan, since his father has that connection, that lineage there?
He wanted to wrestle on Dragon Gate. That was all. I mean, he's gonna, because of his size, he's gonna be a junior heavyweight, and Dragon Gate has the best junior heavyweight wrestling in the world. So if you're gonna come and be successful, you can go to New Japan and God, people are gonna hate me for this.
Nah, it's okay. We shit on New Japan all the time.
You can go, again, this isn't a knock on the New Japan junior division.
It has a ceiling. The New Japan junior division just has a ceiling.
Exactly. You go to New Japan and you wrestle in the junior division. You could have great matches. The best of the Super Juniors is going to be great every single year. But outside of the best of the Super Juniors, there's not that much for the junior division to do. You're going to be in a tag team and you're going to wrestle Desperado and Bushi 7 times. And you'll wrestle, you'll have to do the comedy program with the team. It's going to be repetitive. There's not that much to do. So,
I mean, look at Shingo. He was junior for 1 year, and then he was I want to be a heavyweight. But
now he's a neverweight, so he's going to wrestle. He's going to wrestle Hiroki and Ishii thousands of times.
When Pac was on the cover of that magazine, what was the tagline they used? They don't want to be number 2. They want to be. I can't remember.
Yeah, they don't. It's not about being number 1. It's best at what you do.
Yeah.
And that's what Dragon Gate is out for. I mean, nobody is going to ever come close to New Japan in Japan. It's just it's not going to happen. Everything out, pro wrestling in Japan is New Japan Pro Wrestling. We used to say that it used to be New Japan is 90%, Dragon Gate is 5%. The other promotion, it was 85%. Dragon Gate is 5%. The other promotions make up the other 10%. That's contracted now to where it's New Japan is 90%, Dragon Gate is 5%, maybe even less than that, maybe 4%, and then the other promotions make up the rest. There's no competing with New Japan. And again, if you're a guy that wants to get into wrestling, if you're a kid that is looking to join a wrestling promotion, if you're tall enough, if you meet the size requirements and can pass the test, you're going to go to New Japan. If you're not tall enough to get into New Japan, you're going to go to Dragon Gate. And then
what are the size requirements?
Oh, I don't know what they are for New Japan
They're
anymore. Used
Like
to
can
be.
like Shun is Shun big enough to like Shun is like 180? Like would he be big
He's
enough?
tall. He's tall enough, but I don't know if he's like I don't know if he's big enough. That's why it's always a big deal when a tall guy comes to Dragon Gate.
Yeah, like Shun sticks out. Like he just like
Yeah, but I mean, Skywalker. I mean, he's a guy that grew up, watching Hayabusa, and the
oh yeah,
Hayabusa connect. Through Hayabusa, you go to Dragon Kid, and then Dragon Kid connects you to Dragon Gate. He wants to come in, be a masked superhero high flyer,
of course.
and you can't do that in another promotion is not going to give you a chance to do that.
well, you
Yeah.
said you mentioned the size requirements. That's the whole what is it?
The
Kness?
Kness story.
Yeah, he was trying to go to
Again,
New Japan. They're like he passed the test, but like you're not big enough.
yeah, we're talking 19. This was 1993, 1994. So now the requirements are much less strict than they were then. But at the time, like he was in the Animal Hamaguchi gym. He was, that was the place where New Japan did their test every year. They would do one entrance test every year, and the guys at the Animal Hamaguchi gym would specifically go there because Hamaguchi had the connection, and he knew how to train you to pass the test. And Kness, who not a tall guy, not a big guy, he would go and he would get the best scores on the physical part of the test. He would cut good. You would have to do like a promo type, like a self introduction promo. He would get the best scores on that. But Hiroshi Hase, who was the guy at the time, he would look at him and say, "Look, we can't take you because you're this tall." And this happened 2 years in a row. And at the end, he said, "Look, you're good, but you're this tall. We cannot take you. We don't take anybody." I think it was 105 centimeters.
Oh.
I think that's the number. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and look it up. But it was. I mean, it was. I want to say like Kanemoto would be the cutoff in terms of height. So like Kanemoto sized. But anyway, that led to Kness joining Michinoku Pro. Getting dropped on his head by Taka a bunch while Taka was developing the Michinoku Driver 2. And then leaving there because the Michinoku Pro dojo life, especially in 1995, 96, is difficult because you're stuck up in Tohoku in a freezing gym. He left, bounced around some indies, and it was the Wrestle Yume factory, Wrestle Dream Factory, which had a business deal with the Buko Dojo, which is a Kateo Dojo, which is where Mochizuki Okamura, Taru, Chocoball were all working. So through that business partnership, Okamura became Torimon president, and Torimon merged with Buko Dojo, and they were using guys from Wrestle Dream Factory, which would have been at the time Kness as Makoto, and another guy named Dayu Kawauchi. And Ultimo Dragon ended up taking in Makoto and sending him to Mexico and producing like the vampire character for a while, and been in ever since. So that's that story.
Interesting. So actually, this is, as you mentioned, I think earlier in the interview, this is DOA season, but we're probably not going to have the cage match this year. But the origins of that match, it's so unique, but how we have it today is kind of largely a mystery.
The cage match?
Like why? Like who came up with the idea? Like we're gonna do this big cage match. We're gonna have multiple people in there, and then we're gonna have people running around the ring.
Well, I mean, the original it was an Ultimo Dragon idea because the first ones were like the basic concept of the match. 5-way cage match. Guy loses his hair. Obviously, that's a lucha libre trope. The first couple matches were in Torimon, but the idea of making it into a big wacky thing was just, it became, we need the cage match. We need the cage match to sell tickets in to this show, because even though it's a Golden Week show, but it's usually on the last day of Golden Week, so it's kind of like people want to go home. They have to go to work the next day. So in terms of making the show an attraction to entice people to want to go, it became, we're going to do the cage match every year, and then you have to do some type of escalation while keeping. You also have to keep this match became famous because the one time we did this, so we have to keep doing this, but at the same time we have to escalate and come up with something else. So it's just gotten out of control. I think it's good. Actually, I mean, it's bad, obviously, that the show had to be canceled, but I think it's good that we get a year off from it, because it just next year, just by having the match itself, it's a big deal, because it's just, okay, we didn't have it last year, so we're going to have revenge. So you could just kind of have a more straightforward cage match next year. But it's because it's become a thing where, okay, Final Gate's over, we're into January, nothing going on for a while, but we know that in a few months the cage match is coming up. So what we have to do is we have to have some miscommunication between the heels, where they keep hitting each other. So there's dissension in the heel group, and we don't know which way it's going to go. And this feud leads to this feud, where it becomes every year we kind of have the same pattern to build for the cage match. So I think having a year off is good. And maybe there'll be less pressure to actually have the cage match next year, because maybe it'll just be, okay, we're back. We couldn't have the show last year, but we're back for Dead or Alive 2021, and just having the show is the draw for the show, because it's been 2 years since the last time we were here.
So you'd prefer if they didn't have a cage match next year?
I would have preferred if they did it. Like, I guess it makes sense they have it to sell tickets, but like I would have preferred it they use it when it makes sense, as like organic.
Yeah, exactly.
Not make the yearly thing.
Like the Hell in a Cell
have it
problem.
Stuck at the same point every year.
Like it used to be at Final Gate, Gate of Destiny.
Yeah, the first couple ones. They did the first two in September, like in Toryumon, they were both in September, but after that it floated around. They did one in 2008 in Nagoya, but then the one in 2009 was in Fukuoka, and then they did in Osaka. So I think just having it when the situation fits. Yeah, exactly. That's what I would rather see. Because it's turned into like a Hell in a Cell type situation, to where, okay, this paper, in May we have to have a cage match, so we have to force feed the story into getting there. So like, do we really need to have Eita and Shimizu going back and forth again? I mean, that was the story.
Yamato having 6th year in a row in a cage.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, maybe this year was going to be the Eita turn. We don't know. Let's see what happens. But
well, I kind of wish they would bring back the other gimmick matches. Like, I feel like we haven't had a unit disbands match in forever. We haven't had like something like a Headhunters match in a while, like something, or Captain's Falls.
Yeah,
I'd like to see a return of those things.
Oh, the key hunting matches, or like the Shima two fall, 2 count, 3 rope breaks.
Oh yeah, like
which a match UT should absolutely do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I thought that last year, doing Lucha Libre Classica matches with guys like Yoshino or Yashi doing like T2B style matches would have been great for UT.
Like the matches with Super Shiza, also a guy.
Yeah,
like,
that match
was on Prime Zone.
Yeah, that's what and you could do it. It would have fit last year too, because you could do it around the time that they were doing the 20th anniversary matches. Okay, T2P guys are coming back, so this could be kind of the in between Cork, and you could have kind of like an introduction to T2P type of thing, where you
like if UT a chance to add more submissions instead of just the Cobra twist. Like he just does the Cobra twist all the time. Like he did actually some wacky submissions in the Millennials.
Yeah,
but he just started doing the Cobra twist and the Bien Jave.
Yeah, I mean, he should take the escargot from Mori. Like that should have been a thing that they did last year, when after Mori did his comeback match, and you could have UT go to him backstage and say, I've been watching your stuff on the Dragon Gate Network, and I want to
nice plug.
I want to expand my submission repertoire. Can you please teach me this move?
But it wasn't didn't Doi like one time, I think it was around Dangerous Gate 18, where he was like asking people from T2P to use their moves, and he just started using Iwasa's move, and that's it.
Yeah, because Mishima didn't have a move. They did like a backstage thing. It was on the this is actually on the network. where they had him about this, where he was getting ready for some match. It might have been what you're talking about, Dangerous Gate, where he was talking about how there's these guys from T2P that aren't around anymore, and he wants to keep that memory alive by using their moves. So by using using the Kegon and the Noshigami and all the Iwasa's moves, it helps keep their because they were peers, they were all from the 5th class. It helps keep their memory and the bonds of that class together. But then he was thinking about it. Well, maybe I could use the escargot, maybe not. Raibu Mishima, what did he do? He did crossface. I don't know about that.
Backdrop.
So yeah, he could do the backdrop. He could do back the
I mean, just Iwasa. Yuti could do the Goliath bird eater. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that I agree that he should be. I think last year would have been the time to do it because you had throwback thing. Now, if he did it now, because he's in the Dragon Gate generation, opposing the Torimon generation, it kind of becomes
Could just use it as a mock or like something and just build.
Yeah, beating Torimon guys with their own holds.
Yeah,
that'd be so lit.
I mean, I don't know what they want to do with him when he comes back, if role he's going to be in. So,
well, I was gonna. You mentioned the 20th anniversary series, and I kind of have a hot take on that. Where I was very disappointed in it because I felt like it's a 20 years, but we only cared about 5. Like we really didn't see any of the other years besides Torimon, and I get why because of Ultimo, but
I think that. Yeah, I would have liked, especially towards the end. The first half, building up to Dragon coming back, was done very well.
Yeah.
But after that, I think they could have done some stuff where they did they could have reunited Deep Drunkers, for example.
That one time when Arakin came back.
Yeah.
Like all of the members were in Real Hazard. They could have just got some old gear, thrown the music, just like a little throwback.
Yeah, and Kzy kind of references the Deep Drunkers entrance music a lot. He did it on he sang it on a Prime Zone and stuff like that. They could have, done they could have just done a gallery of old heel units against RED matches where you could do Deep Drunkers against, RED B team. It doesn't have to be the main event, but you could do Kzy, Arik, and Kanda, and since Sugawara is friendly, you can bring Sugawara back in and have them wrestle.
Yeah, it's like Diamante, Kazuma, Yoshida.
You beat Hyo and no one cares because you beat Hyo, and it's a throwback thing on the undercard, and it doesn't mess with the rest of the show. I agree to see more things like that. I would have given a Triangle Gate reign to the Aganiso guys. Have Mochizuki, Kondo.
Okay, I was thinking you're gonna go with Jet.
Yeah, just for a month. They could have had them win in April and lose back.
Champions were Kanda, Kazuma, Kong. Who cares?
Yeah, put it on that, then have switch it back really quick, and then have Strong Machines win the championship. I would have liked to have seen more things where it leaked out into the rest of the show. Since they had those guys in, the Agani came back again a couple more times. Since they were doing it, I would have liked to have seen more of it. But is what it is.
Well, with Agon, you mentioned Agon in what Wrestle 1 closing, Kondo's free.
Yeah, this isn't a scoop or anything, but. King of Gate did have a mystery outsider scheduled.
Yeah, we saw on the poster.
On the poster,
there was a big X.
There was an X. Yeah.
I wonder who that was supposed to be.
It was either Kondo or Marufuji, and Kondo seems pretty likely. Again, I don't know 100%, so this isn't a scoop or a spoiler.
I mean, that's really All Japan, maybe, where you could go. Well, maybe DDT.
DDT isn't a place you go if you have other options, though.
Yeah, but maybe he doesn't have them.
Yeah, I think with Dragon back, I think him coming in and doing the Arakin schedule because he's broken down. He's not, in terms of having a lot of miles left on him. He doesn't have that much left on him. So having him come in doing a strong King of Gate run
Yeah,
maybe
would have
getting,
liked some like undercard teams with Yashi would be nice.
yeah, just have him be like an enforcer Torimon generation member where he's in,
Yeah, like
because
someone
just,
Yoshida and Big R can clash lariats with.
yeah,
Because
exactly,
I don't think
exactly.
Toryumon has that big power guy, do they?
No, they
Like
don't.
Dragon Gate has Kai,
They kind of have Susumu.
RED have Kazuma, Diamante, Big, and Yoshida. But
Yeah.
Toryumon like really is missing
So,
that big power dude.
and it also plays into the idea of, Torimon roots go out so far and so wide that even though, the Dragon Gate guys have the youth side and RED ignores all the rules and they'll do what they can it takes to win, Torimon has like this un this endless pool of guys that they can call on to come and help them out, and they bring in, Shuji Kondo, this huge powerhouse guy. He's been a champion all around
Mm.
he's been a champion all around Japan, and they can just bring him in as a ringer to join and fight for them. It would be a good thing. So it makes sense. As Wrestle One closing was pretty much known at the end of last year, it was around December.
I mean, he was there February, teaming with Yoshida.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it was around the Torimon reunion show. It was pretty much, it spread around backstage that, Wrestle One is closing up pretty soon, and that, it was like, so is Kondo coming in, and it was like, well, maybe, it was like kind of a don't ask that type of maybe.
So it wasn't like
So
the virus killed it. It was just that was already in motion.
no, Wrestle One was never profitable. One was basically, they had they had a big sponsor that was willing to keep them alive for a certain amount of time, and they had their school, and the school was run kind of like an American wrestling school, where as long as it's like with New Japan Dojo, Dragon Gate Dojo, things like that, where if you suck, eventually you're not going to make it, like you're going to wash out. But the Wrestle One Dojo was well, if you can keep paying the tuition, you can keep coming to practice, and as long as you keep paying, eventually maybe we'll let you debut. So that was like a strong source of income for them, but that had kind of dried out, and their sponsor, their money mark, was just not willing to finance it anymore. So virus had nothing to do with it. Corona will probably have a strong impact on other smaller promotions, but
I mean, Big Japan is like struggling right now.
Big Japan is crowdfunding
Yeah.
to stay alive, and I actually think that they're going to do really because I think that they'll get sponsors willing to kick in a large chunk of change, and they don't have a huge fan base, but they have a very loyal fan base, and the idea of keeping the promotion alive. I think that they might do better for at least the first 6 weeks or 2 months through crowdfunding than they would running shows in general. I think it might actually help them get a decent amount of capital, because not like those guys are paid all that much to begin with. So I think Big Japan will be fine because of that. But like Michinoku, for example, Michinoku went up on they were on their official Twitter, like the official Michinoku Pro Twitter account had a tweet that was like, we can't pay our salaries. Can you please go to our online shop and buy some merchandise and help us out? Which is like dire situation. And if this goes on and companies can't run shows if this goes into fall and we're not able to run shows with live crowds, like nobody here is safe. New Japan is losing a lot of money every month just through their salaries, and Stardom is losing money. You think that because these groups have Bushi cyber agent groups are safe because they have all this money behind them, the groups behind them are losing money too. DDT is a promotion that loses $500,000 a year anyway. So having no shows to run isn't going to help them at all. Noah was purchased by Cyber Agent because they were losing. Nobody should think that their favorite promotion is safe. If this stretches on, I mean, right now Japan is thinking that maybe June start being able to have shows with crowds again. But if this goes prolonged, I mean, people might be surprised at the groups that end up folding. I mean, I hope Dragon Gate isn't one of them, but
Knock
we'll
on
see what
wood.
happens.
something I wanted to ask you because I think you had said something on Twitter a while ago about the maybe looking back into getting merch for like for Western fans,
Mm,
and I
well,
I feel like that'd be a good way to support the Dragon Gate along with the network.
Network.
well, the problem is right now you can't ship packages.
Mm.
The post office isn't accepting international mail right now. So, and the number two on that, that would be again, it's one of those things like when we did it the first time, it was very much okay, we're willing to let you do this as long as we don't have to do anything. So
Hmm.
it was basically me taking the orders, handling the payments, processing everything, and then I would see them. I'd go to Cork and Hall and I'd see them, and they would, give me what I would get whatever I needed, and then I would send everything out individually. And I can't do that. I can't like I don't see them. They're in Kobe. I'm in Tokyo. So
So what happened with the Pro Wrestling Tees store? Because that's still up and going.
that was unrelated. I think maybe the Dragon Gate UK guys did that, but
Because like
that wasn't
there's some wild stuff on
that
there, like a toga
there was
shirt.
there wasn't that wasn't a thing done by Dragon Gate here because they didn't want to do when we first started talking about doing like the international store that I was just talking about. I brought up Pro Wrestling Tees as the better option, but they didn't want to do it. They had no interest in doing it whatsoever. So, but again, this was old management,
Hmm.
so maybe it's something that they might be more interested in now. Maybe it's something that myself or Larry or somebody should bring up to them as a potential new source of revenue.
Because that
Because
new
now
Susumu shirt I'm dying for.
yeah, it's easier now too because you can just kind of put up the official logo shirts and have it in the 4 different colors, and you've got 4 different options of stuff. It's not just so it might be a better idea now. But no, and this for you guys or anybody that's listening to this. Once we get going again, um, if there's anything like you really need to have, shoot me a DM and I can try and work something out. Again, there'd probably be a slow turnaround. Like if you asked me for something on June 3rd, I wouldn't necessarily be back until the middle of July. So there would be a long turn. Another option is you can order stuff off the online store and use a service like Tenso or White Rabbit, who are forwarding services, and what you can do is you can purchase the items off of the online store as usual, and they'll give you like an address in Japan to ship to, and it would ship to them, and then they can forward it to you wherever you are, and that works anywhere in the world. So I think it's tenso.com.
Yeah, those things are so expensive though.
Is the shipping expensive?
Yeah, like it's shipping. Like the shirts are a pretty like a pretty good thing, and then shipping is also just expensive. Like I had to ship a figure, which it's funny you mentioned them not accepting international mail, which explains some couple things because I had to send someone a figure to Japan, and they said they haven't gotten it yet. But it was a relatively small thing, but it cost me like $30 on top
Oh,
of.
from shipping from the US to Japan is like so ungodly expensive. Like you have
Really.
no idea how much more expensive it is to ship a t-shirt from Japan to anywhere in the world, EMS, it'll get there in 3-4 days. It's only like 2,000 yen, $20. Um,
Wow, that's a lot less.
like I remember I remember when I was moving to when I was doing the visa processing to come to Japan, I had to send there was a single sheet of paper. Like literally it was a single sheet, like a single document that had to be signed by hand that I couldn't sign on. and there was a certain deadline. Like I had to send it in by a certain, like it needed to be here in a couple days, so I had to FedEx it, and it was like for a single sheet of paper, it was like $110 US, something ridiculous like that.
Jesus.
Whenever my mom will send me like if I want snacks or if I want American junk food, I'll say, "Can you please send me this?" And she'll always say, "Yeah, it cost me $90 to send that." It's like a box of Twizzlers and some
Jesus.
like candy bars. It's ridiculous. Shipping from the U.S. is so expensive. So from Japan to the U.S., it wouldn't be as expensive as that. So like if there is something you want, it's worth looking into. Like it'll be kind of expensive, but it won't be like that expensive.
Oh, interesting.
And also, since we're talking about this, I'll plug this now. Again, coming once we start running shows again, and if anybody wants tickets to Dragon Gate shows, you can. We have an email address up on the English Twitter account. It's info@shop-dg.com. Just send us an email. We can prepare tickets for you directly. Don't have to worry about going through a middleman or anything. We can reserve them, and they'll be at the door for you. You don't have to pay in advance. Just all we ask is if you are canceling, give us enough lead time and try not to cancel the day of the show.
Interesting question about that. Is there like, how hard is it to get like something to get like front row seats at Corkin? I assume it's impossible.
Front row seats at Corkin is difficult. If you want them, we can get them for you. The front row, second row sells out pretty fast in fan club pre-sales, but generally, as long as you give us enough lead time, like let's say you want to come to the show in August, if you let us know first week of July, we can usually arrange it. Like last minute, it's a little bit more difficult, but as long as we have enough lead time, we can do it for you.
And the bigger shows?
Bigger shows is easy. Yeah, bigger shows generally we can. Again, as long as the day before or a week before the show, we can usually arrange.
That's interesting.
Pretty much any seat you want. We can't guarantee like the exact seat.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit more difficult. Like you can't. Like I want seat 17 in the second row on the north side. Like that's a little difficult, but generally we can get you as close to your wanted seat as possible. So for anyone that wants to come to a Dragon Gate show, don't worry about getting tickets. We can do it for you directly. Don't worry about having to go to a convenience store when you get here or worry about third party or that. We can do it directly, no fees, you don't have to worry about payment. It's just cash at the box office. And
how much is like, was it like a front row ticket run?
It depends on the show. Let me see. Price. We had
like the card, or just like the venue.
Depends on the venue. Let me see if there's a Corkin Hall, for example. Front row is 7,700 yen. Like that's the most expensive seat in the house. So about $70 US, thereabouts. And then there's also 60, 50, 40, and $30 options. For the bigger shows, there's like the Dragon VIP seats. Those are usually about 100, 110. But that's where they cap out.
So what's Dragon VIP?
Dragon VIP is like the first two rows. You also get earlier entrance. Like you get like a priority entrance line. Again, these are only for like the 5 big shows of the year have these. Okay. And like the Kobe World Dragon VIP usually comes with a t-shirt. There'll be like they make a t-shirt for every big event. So it's usually like black with the logo on the back. And you'll get like a unique color variant of the t-shirt. Or other little pre-order privileges, like if you're buying games or things like that, where you get like a color variant or a unique thing. Like Dragon VIP usually comes with that, and it's first two maybe 3 rows.
That's pretty neat. Those are questions I've always like wanted to know the information on, or like, and I'm sure other people want to know that type of stuff. People who are looking to get into or go to Dragon Gate in Japan in the near future, or I guess the far future now.
Yeah, I guess just shoot an email to that address. I'm the one behind it, so you could also just directly. But I have seating charts for most of the venues, so I can send seating charts over so you, if there's a specific seat or a specific area that you want to sit in, you can kind of pinpoint it on the map, and then I can go back to the office and see, how close we can get you to there.
Awesome.
So,
Well, I'd say this interview is kind of winding down. So, where can they find you on Twitter if they did want to,
Me?
like, if they want to reserve
Okay.
seats?
Okay. Things to follow on Twitter. First and foremost, please follow the official English Dragon Gate Twitter. That is at Dragon Gate EN. Our Facebook is also at the same address. You can also follow Dragon Gate in general. Dragon Gate is what? Dragon Gate _pro. Also follow all the wrestlers. Follow Larry Dallas at Larry Dallas. Larry Dallas DG, I think, is his. You want to follow me? My personal Twitter is, what is mine? At DG_J, spelled JAE. I don't tweet very much. I do have what I do tweet about usually if there's new stuff going up on the network, Torimon stuff, or general archive type stuff. I'll put up match guides or recommended matches. My pinned tweet is a episode guide to the Torimon that are up, episodes that are up on the network. So you can go and scroll through and see what the main focus for those episodes and any important matches you should watch, and kind of just trying to add some context to the episodes for people that are watching it for the first time. And otherwise, I think that's it. Yeah, but the most important things to follow are the official accounts. Our pinned tweets and our profiles has all the contact information that you could, if you want to get in touch with us directly.
And actually, you mentioned the following everyone on Twitter that's Dragon Gate related.
Where's Yoshino?
Yeah, where's Yoshino? But if you go on the @DreamKeyPod Twitter, we actually have a link that is a Twitter group that is every single Dragon Gate employee, and you can follow them all really easily. Just go down the list and following them.
Cool, that works. Also, don't forget to follow them all on Instagram. Right now, the wrestlers are bored out of their minds, so a lot of them are doing Instagram lives and Q&A, like doing the Instagram ask me anything type of thing. And you can ask in English. They'll do their best to respond in English as well. So now is a great time to follow all of the Dragon Gate wrestlers and staff on social media as we hopefully can get back in front and get out there with shows and English commentary and all that other stuff that we were hoping to have this year before it all got shut down.
And Leon, where can they find your spicy Kness takes?
Spicy Kness takes on Twitter at Earth2Leon.
And if you want to follow me, you can find me at CHUCK0RRIS55. And if you want to follow the pod, we are at DreamKeyPod. And I think that does it for this episode of the Dream Key Podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys.